It was early morning when the small one-room apartment woke up with the soft cries of a baby. The young woman, barely in her 20s, opened her tired eyes and pulled herself out of the thin mattress she shared with her child. Her name was Maya. Life had never been easy for her, but now as a single mother, the weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders every single day. The little one, wrapped in a worn blanket, cried for milk. Maya bent down and whispered softly, trying to calm the baby. "Mama is here. Don't cry, sweetheart. Mama is here." She rocked the child in her arms, but the baby's cries grew louder. The truth was simple and painful: there was no milk left in the house. Maya walked toward the small wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. She opened it, hoping maybe she had missed something the night before. Maybe there would be a can of powdered milk, maybe a few coins hidden away, maybe anything at all. But the shelves were almost empty. Only half a loaf of bread was left, dry and hard. She sat down on the floor, holding her baby close, and felt her heart sink. The neighbors in her building were kind but struggling themselves. Everyone worked hard to survive, and asking for help was something Maya avoided. She had already borrowed sugar and rice the previous week, promising to return the favor when she could. She knew she could not knock on another door again, at least not so soon. The sound of her child crying echoed in her ears, louder than anything else. She thought of the jobs she worked, cleaning houses during the day and folding clothes at a laundry shop in the evenings. The little money she earned was just enough for rent and basic food. One small emergency, like a doctor's visit or an extra bill, could push her completely into debt. As she sat there, rocking her child and trying to hum a lullaby, her eyes landed on a small wooden box on top of the cabinet. The box was old, scratched, and dusty, but inside it was the one thing she had kept safe for years. Maya stood up, opened it carefully, and pulled out a necklace. It was not made of diamonds or anything grand. It was a simple gold chain with a delicate pendant in the center. The necklace had belonged to her mother, who passed away when Maya was still a teenager. Her mother had worn it almost every day, and when she died, it was the only thing she left behind. To Maya, it was more than jewelry. It was a reminder of her mother's love, her hugs, her gentle voice. Maya held the necklace in her palm and stared at it. She remembered her mother once telling her, "This necklace has been in our family for many years. It carries our story, Maya. Promise me you will take care of it." At that time, Maya had promised. She had kept it safe through all her struggles, never thinking of giving it away. But now, the cries of her child reminded her that promises were not enough. Love meant sacrifice. The baby needed milk more than she needed a memory hanging around her neck. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Mama, forgive me. I don't have a choice." The thought of selling the necklace made her heart ache. It was the last piece of her mother she had. But then she looked at her baby's tiny face, red from crying, and knew she had to do something. Hunger could not wait for memories. She stood up, washed her face quickly, and wrapped her child in a shawl. The streets outside were busy with people rushing to work, buses honking, and shopkeepers opening their stalls. She walked slowly, carrying her baby close to her chest. With each step, the necklace in her pocket seemed to grow heavier, as if reminding her of the decision she was about to make. The city was full of jewelry shops, bright windows displaying sparkling pieces she could never dream of owning. She passed by them nervously, wondering if any jeweler would take her small necklace. Would they laugh at her for bringing something so simple? Would they offer her only a few coins? She didn't know, but she hoped someone would be kind enough to give her enough money to buy milk and maybe even some food for a few days. As she walked, her thoughts went back to her mother again. She remembered sitting by her side when she was little, watching her polish the necklace carefully with a soft cloth. Her mother always smiled and said, "It's not the gold that makes it special. It's the hands that held it before us, the lives it has seen." Maya swallowed hard, pushing back her tears. If only her mother were alive, she would not be alone in this moment. The baby cried again, louder this time, pulling Maya back to the present. She rocked the little one gently, whispering, "Just a little longer, my love. Mama will fix this. Just a little longer." She quickened her pace. Finally, she reached a small jewelry shop at the corner of the street. Unlike the bigger shops with shiny glass displays, this one looked modest. The wooden sign above the door was faded, but it felt less intimidating than the others. Maya paused at the entrance, her heart racing. She had never sold anything in her life, let alone something as personal as this necklace. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The shop smelled faintly of metal and old wood. Behind the counter stood an older man with kind eyes, polishing a watch. He looked up as the bell above the door chimed. Their eyes met for a moment, and Maya felt a strange mix of nervousness and relief. At least he did not look unkind. The man smiled gently. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Maya's throat tightened. She shifted the baby in her arms and reached into her pocket, pulling out the necklace. Her hands trembled as she placed it on the counter. I need to sell this," she whispered softly, her voice barely steady. The man's eyes dropped to the necklace, and for a split second, his smile faded. He reached forward, picked it up carefully, and studied it with quiet focus. Maya stood there, clutching her baby, unaware that this moment was the beginning of a story far bigger than she could imagine. Maya stood quietly, watching the older man behind the counter hold the necklace. Her heart raced as his fingers carefully touched the chain, then the pendant. He turned it gently, as though it were something fragile, something precious. To Maya, it was just a way to buy milk for her baby now, but to the jeweler, his eyes seemed to say it was more than that. She bit her lip nervously, afraid he might say it wasn't worth much. She needed just enough money for milk, maybe some bread, maybe a few small things for her baby. She wasn't expecting a fortune. But what if he said it was fake? What if he refused to buy it? The thought made her stomach twist. The jeweler cleared his throat and asked softly, "Where did you get this necklace?" Maya froze for a moment. She wasn't sure how much she should say. Her voice shook as she answered, It belonged to my mother. She gave it to me before she passed away. It's all I have left of her." The man's eyes softened, but his expression grew serious. He nodded slowly, almost as if he already knew part of the story. He didn't push her with more questions. Instead, he placed the necklace down on a velvet cloth and studied it under the light. Maya shifted her baby in her arms. The child had quieted down a little, sucking on her thumb, but Maya knew it was only a matter of time before the crying began again. She gently rocked the baby and whispered under her breath, trying to calm both herself and her little one. The shop was small and quiet. A clock ticked on the wall, and the soft sound of the man's tools clicking together filled the silence. Every second felt like an hour to Maya. She rubbed her dry hands together nervously, her eyes darting around the shop. The glass cases displayed watches, rings, and necklaces far more expensive than anything she could imagine owning. She felt out of place, like she didn't belong in such a shop. Finally, the jeweler looked up. His voice was calm but kind. "This necklace, it is not ordinary. It's old, and it was made with care. It must have been passed down in your family for many years." Maya nodded, her throat tight. "My mother told me it was special. But right now, I don't have a choice. I need to sell it." The words tasted bitter in her mouth. Saying it out loud made the loss feel heavier. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. The jeweler leaned back slightly, still holding the necklace in his hands. For a moment, his gaze drifted, as if he were lost in thought. Something about the pendant seemed to pull him into a memory. Maya didn't notice, She was too busy worrying about the answer she was waiting for. He placed the necklace gently back on the cloth and looked at her. Are you sure you want to sell this? Once it leaves your hands, it will be very difficult to get it back. Maya swallowed hard. She wanted to scream that she didn't want to sell it, that it was the last piece of her mother she had. But then she looked down at her baby's face, soft and innocent, and she knew what she had to do. She raised her chin slightly and whispered, I'm sure. My child needs milk. That's all that matters right now. The jeweler studied her face carefully. He could see the determination in her eyes, but also the deep sadness. Something inside him stirred, a feeling he hadn't felt in many years, a mix of longing and regret. He didn't speak of it, not yet. Instead, he asked gently, what is your name? Maya, she replied, almost too softly. He repeated it under his breath, as though the name itself carried weight. Maya, then he cleared his throat and nodded. All right. I will give you money for the necklace. But first, I want to tell you something about it. Maya looked up, confused. She had expected a quick answer, either a price or a refusal. Instead, he wanted to talk about the necklace. She shifted nervously, but listened. This necklace, the jeweler began, is not just made of gold. Look closely at the pendant. He held it up to the light, showing her the delicate design etched into the small charm. It was a pattern of intertwined lines, almost like vines, circling around a tiny stone in the middle. This kind of work was done many years ago, by skilled hands. It is not something you find in stores today. It was crafted with meaning, not just beauty. Maya blinked, surprised. She had never really studied the necklace in such detail. To her, it was simply her mother's necklace, valuable because of who it belonged to, not because of how it was made. Hearing the man's words made her realize it was even more precious than she thought. But that realization only made her chest ache more. She whispered, so, it is worth something. The man looked at her for a long moment. Yes. More than you think. Her heart skipped. Maybe this meant she could get enough money for milk, food, and maybe even rent. But she didn't dare hope too much. She didn't want to seem greedy. She lowered her eyes again. I just need enough for milk. That's all. The jeweler pressed his lips together, as if holding back many words. He studied Maya, her tired eyes, her simple clothes, the way she held her child protectively. He could see her pride mixed with her struggle. Something about her reminded him of someone from long ago. He reached for his drawer, pulled out a small envelope, and placed some money inside. He did it quietly, without making her feel uncomfortable. Then he pushed the envelope toward her, keeping the necklace still on the cloth in front of him. Maya looked at the envelope, confused. But, the necklace. The jeweler's voice was soft. Take the money first. We will talk about the necklace after. Her hands shook as she picked it up. She opened it just enough to see the bills inside. It was more than she had expected, far more than just milk money. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She looked at him with tears threatening to fall. I can't take this much. It's too much for the necklace. But the man only smiled faintly. Sometimes, value is not only in gold. Sometimes, it is in the story it carries. Maya didn't fully understand, but her heart felt a strange warmth. She wanted to say thank you, but her voice failed her. Instead, she just nodded, holding her baby closer. The man leaned back, still staring at the necklace, still lost in thought. To him, it wasn't just an item of jewelry. It was a piece of his own past, a piece of a life he thought he had lost forever. But he wasn't ready to speak yet. Not now. Maya, unaware of the storm of emotions in his heart, thought only of her baby. She thought of the milk she would finally buy, the little stomach that would finally be full. She thought of a night where her child could sleep peacefully without crying. For her, that was everything. As she turned to leave the shop, the necklace still lying on the cloth, the jeweler called out softly, "Maya, would you come back tomorrow? I may have something else for you." She paused, surprised, but then nodded slowly. "Yes. I can come back." With that, she walked out into the street, her baby against her chest, her heart a little lighter but her mind filled with questions. Behind her, the jeweler stood in silence, holding back memories that had just begun to awaken. The next morning arrived with soft light filtering through the thin curtains of Maya's little apartment. She had managed to buy milk the evening before, and for the first time in days, her baby had slept peacefully. The sound of steady breathing from the crib filled her with relief, and she allowed herself a small smile as she watched the child rest. But then her eyes drifted to the small wooden box on the cabinet. The box was empty. The necklace was gone. A part of her heart felt empty with it, but she reminded herself again and again this was the right choice. Her child's full stomach was worth more than any piece of jewelry. Still, a quiet ache lingered. She thought of the jeweler's words the night before, "Would you come back tomorrow?" His voice had been gentle, almost hesitant, as if it carried more meaning than he had revealed. She didn't understand why he wanted her to return, but his tone had been kind, and kindness was something she rarely experienced. So, later that morning, with her baby bundled in a shawl, Maya prepared herself to go back to the shop. She felt nervous. What could the man want from her? Did he change his mind about the money? Did he expect her to pay something back? She didn't know, but her heart told her she could trust him. The streets were busy again, vendors calling out, children running with laughter, buses rumbling past. But Maya moved slowly, thinking about the day before. She remembered the way the jeweler had looked at the necklace, his eyes full of recognition and something deeper she couldn't name. When she reached the little shop on the corner, she hesitated at the door. The faded wooden sign swayed gently above her. She held her baby close, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. The bell chimed softly, just as it had the first time. The man looked up from behind the counter. His expression changed instantly when he saw her, relief mixed with something unspoken. He stood a little straighter and smiled. "You came back." Maya nodded shyly, stepping inside. The shop smelled the same, old wood, Polish, and faint traces of metal. She glanced at the counter and noticed the necklace was still there, lying carefully on the velvet cloth as though it hadn't moved since yesterday. Her heart skipped. For some reason, she had assumed he would put it away, maybe even melt it down or place it in a case. But there it was, untouched. She looked at it quickly and then looked away, not wanting her emotions to show. The jeweler studied her silently for a moment before speaking. "How is your child today?" The question startled her. Few people ever asked about her baby, except perhaps the kind older neighbor who sometimes peeked in. She blinked and replied softly, "Better. I was able to buy milk." "Thank you." The man nodded, his eyes warm. He seemed to hesitate before speaking again. "Maya, I want to ask you something, and please forgive me if it feels personal." Her heart raced. She held her baby tighter and nodded slowly. "Go ahead." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the counter. His voice was gentle but searching. "You said this necklace belonged to your mother. Do you know where she got it from?" Maya frowned slightly, surprised by the question. "No. I don't really know. She once told me it had been in our family for many years. She said it was special, but she never explained more than that." "Why?" The jeweler's eyes softened, and he looked down at the necklace as if it were an old friend. He ran his fingers lightly over the pendant and whispered almost to himself, "Yes, it is special." Maya tilted her head, curiosity filling her. "Do you know something about it?" The man looked at her for a long time before answering. "I may know more than you think. This design. I have seen it before. In fact, I made it many years ago." Maya's mouth fell open slightly. You made this necklace?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. A long time ago, when I was much younger, I worked as a craftsman. I designed this necklace myself. It was not just jewelry to me, it was a gift for someone I loved deeply." Maya felt her breath catch. She looked at the necklace again, now with new eyes. "You gave this to someone? To who?" The jeweler's eyes grew distant, as though he were traveling back in time. His voice softened with memory. "Her name was Grace. She was a kind, beautiful woman. We loved each other very much, but life pulled us apart. Circumstances I could not control. I gave her this necklace as a promise, as a piece of my heart." Maya's chest tightened. Her mother's name had been Grace. She stared at him, speechless, her mind trying to put the pieces together. The jeweler, unaware of the storm building inside her, continued. "I never saw her again after that. I searched for her, but she was gone. And with her, the necklace. I thought I had lost both forever." Maya's knees felt weak. She held onto the counter to steady herself. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Grace was my mother." The jeweler froze. His eyes widened, his hands trembling as he clutched the edge of the counter. What did you say?" Maya swallowed hard, her own tears threatening to spill. "My mother's name was Grace. She passed away years ago. This necklace was hers. She gave it to me before she died." The man stared at her, his face pale, his eyes filling with tears. He whispered her name again, "Maya," his voice broke as he pressed a hand to his chest, as though steadying his heart. For a moment, silence filled the shop. The ticking of the clock seemed louder than ever. Then, with trembling lips, he asked, "Maya, how old are you?" 22, she whispered, still holding her baby close. The man closed his eyes, and a tear slipped down his cheek. "Grace, she never told me. I never knew." Maya's heart pounded as realization washed over her. The man who stood before her, the man who had given her money, the man who had crafted the necklace, he was not just a kind stranger. He was her father. Her hands shook as she clutched her child tighter. 1,000 questions filled her mind, but none found their way out. She simply stood there, staring at him, tears streaming silently down her face. The jeweler's voice trembled as he whispered, "Maya, you are my daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy, unbelievable, yet undeniable. The necklace had carried its silent story for years, and now, at last, the truth had found its way to light. Maya felt her world shift. She had walked into the shop with nothing but desperation, hoping to trade a memory for milk. Instead, she had uncovered a piece of her life she never knew was missing. Her baby stirred in her arms, and she kissed the child's forehead gently, as if grounding herself in reality. Her father, the man she never knew, stood before her, tears falling freely, reaching out with shaking hands, not to take but to give back what was lost. And in that small, quiet shop, two broken pieces of the past began to fit together again. The words hung heavy in the air, "Maya, you are my daughter." Maya stood frozen, her baby cradled in her arms, her heart racing so fast it felt like it might burst. She had come into this shop only to sell a necklace for milk. She had never imagined she would walk out carrying a truth that would change her entire life. Her eyes searched the jeweler's face. His hands trembled as he held onto the counter, his eyes watery, full of years of emotion he could no longer hide. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but her voice was trapped somewhere deep inside her chest. Finally, she whispered, almost too softly to hear, You You're my father. The jeweler nodded slowly, tears falling freely down his cheeks. Yes, Maya. I didn't know. I never knew. If I had known, I would have been there. I would have searched harder. I would have given anything to be by your side. His voice broke as he lowered his head, ashamed of the years lost. Maya's mind swirled with memories of her mother. Grace, her sweet, strong mother, who had carried so much on her own shoulders. Why had she never told Maya about him? Why had she kept this truth hidden? The questions burned inside her, but she also remembered how gentle and protective her mother had always been. Perhaps she had her reasons. Her father stepped around the counter, slowly, as if afraid to scare her away. He stood a few feet from her, his hands shaking as he reached out but then pulled them back, unsure if he had the right to touch her. Maya, he whispered again, her name breaking in his voice, for all these years, I thought I had lost Grace forever. I never imagined she had given me a child. You are part of me. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She felt a storm of emotions: shock, confusion, even anger, but also an unfamiliar warmth. She had grown up without a father, without even a single memory of him. Now, here he was, standing right in front of her. Her baby stirred in her arms, as if sensing the tension. She kissed her child's forehead, the soft comfort grounding her. Finally, she found the strength to ask, "Why weren't you there? Why didn't you come for us?" The jeweler's shoulders slumped. His voice grew heavy with regret. Maya, I wanted to. Your mother and I, we loved each other, but life was not kind. I was working far away at the time, trying to build a future for us. Then, suddenly, she was gone. Her family moved, and I lost every way to find her. I searched for years, but the trail grew cold. I thought she had chosen another path, one that did not include me. But never did I stop thinking of her. He paused, wiping his face with the back of his hand. And now, here you are. My daughter. Standing before me after all these years. Maya listened, her heart torn. She wanted to believe him. His voice carried no lies, only sorrow. But she also felt the pain of growing up without a father, the birthdays with only her mother's smile, the nights when she wished she had someone else to lean on. You missed so much, she whispered, her voice breaking. You missed all of it. My childhood, my struggles, my life. His face crumpled. I know. And I cannot change that, no matter how much I wish I could. But if you allow me, Maya, I want to be here now. I want to be part of your life. I want to know my grandchild. His eyes softened as they moved to the baby in her arms. Please, let me have a chance to make up for what was lost. Maya looked down at her child. The baby yawned, unaware of the storm of emotions filling the room. For the first time, Maya imagined her child growing up with a grandfather. Someone who could give love, wisdom, and support. The thought both scared her and warmed her heart. Her father stepped closer, slowly, giving her space to decide. His voice was quiet, almost pleading. Maya, may I hold my grandchild? She hesitated, clutching the baby a little tighter. Trust was not something easily given, especially after a lifetime without him. But something in his eyes, a deep honesty, a longing, softened her heart. She nodded slowly and whispered, "Careful." With trembling hands, he reached out. Maya gently placed the baby into his arms. For a moment, his whole body shook as tears spilled freely down his face. He looked at the child as though seeing a miracle. His voice was shaky but full of wonder. So small, so beautiful, just like Grace. Maya watched him, her own tears falling silently. She saw the way he cradled her baby, the way his rough hands turned gentle, and something inside her shifted. Perhaps this was what her mother had wanted for them to find each other someday, for love to connect them again. After a long silence, he looked up at her. Maya. I don't want to take the necklace from you. It belongs to you, and to your child after you. Please, keep it. Let it stay in the family where it belongs. Maya blinked, surprised. But, the money. He shook his head firmly. That was never about money. It was about helping you, about making sure you had what you needed. The necklace is your inheritance. A gift from your mother. And now, I see, a bridge between us. Her heart swelled, and she pressed a hand to her mouth to stop the sobs rising in her chest. She had walked into his shop ready to give up the last piece of her mother. Instead, she had been given back not only the necklace but a piece of her life. She thought she would never have a father. He stepped forward carefully, returning the baby to her arms. His hand lingered for a moment, resting gently on hers. Maya, I cannot erase the past. But from this moment on, I promise you I will be here. For you. For your child. For whatever you need. Maya looked at him, her tears blurring her vision. Slowly, she nodded. All right. But this will take time. I don't know you yet. I don't know how to feel. His eyes softened, full of patience. I will wait as long as it takes. I will prove myself, not with words, but with actions. They stood in silence, the necklace shining faintly on the velvet cloth, the baby's soft breathing filling the quiet space. It was a moment of healing, fragile but real. For the first time, Maya felt something new stirring inside her: hope. Hope that the pieces of her broken story could be joined together. Hope that her child would grow up surrounded not by emptiness, but by love from both sides of the family. She tightened her arms around her baby and looked at her father again. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. Then let's start, one step at a time. And with that, a new chapter quietly began in both their lives. The days that followed were unlike any Maya had known before. For years, she had carried her struggles quietly, her world built from long hours of work, sleepless nights, and whispered lullabies to her baby. Now, suddenly, there was someone walking beside her, a man she had never known but who carried half of her story in his heart. Her father, Samuel, kept his word. The very next day, he came to visit her small apartment. He didn't come empty-handed. In his arms, he carried a bag filled with groceries, milk, bread, fruit, and even a small blanket for the baby. Maya stood by the doorway, unsure of how to react. She wasn't used to this kind of care. But when she saw him kneel down, gently spreading the blanket over the crib with eyes full of love, her heart softened. The baby cooed and reached tiny fingers toward him. Samuel smiled, his wrinkles deepening around his eyes, and held the little hand as if it were the most precious treasure. Maya watched quietly. She had seen many men in her neighborhood walk past children without a second glance, yet here was a man who had only just learned he was a grandfather, already pouring out love as though it had always been there, waiting. In the evenings, Maya sometimes visited the jewelry shop. She would sit in the corner with her baby, watching her father polish old watches and repair broken chains. He always made time to talk with her, to tell her small pieces of his life, filling the silence with stories she had never heard before. I remember when I was young, he said one night, your mother used to laugh at how clumsy I was with my tools. But when I finished this necklace, he pointed to the heirloom now resting safely in Maya's hand, she cried. She said it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given her. Maya listened, her eyes stinging with tears. It was strange hearing about her mother from someone else, as if she were meeting her again through his words. She realized how much love had been part of her mother's past, even if she herself had never known it. But trust does not grow overnight. There were still days when Maya hesitated. She questioned if opening her heart was safe. Years of hardship had taught her to be careful, to rely only on herself. Yet, every time Samuel showed up with a smile, with patience, with small acts of kindness, helping fix the broken chair in her kitchen, carrying her bags from the market, or simply listening a little while inside her slowly crumbled. One Sunday morning, Samuel invited her to join him for breakfast at a nearby cafe. Maya almost said no, money was always tight, and she disliked sitting in places where she felt she didn't belong. But he insisted gently. "Please, Maya. My treat. Let me share a meal with my daughter and my grandchild." So she agreed. The cafe was small and warm, filled with the smell of fresh bread and coffee. They sat by the window, her baby sleeping peacefully in the stroller beside them. For the first time in a long while, Maya ate without worry. Samuel watched her, a soft smile on his face. "You remind me of your mother," he said quietly, stirring his tea. "The way you smile, the way you hold your child. She was strong, just like you. She carried her world on her shoulders, and now I see you doing the same." Maya looked down, her fork trembling slightly in her hand. "She never told me about you," she whispered. "I don't know why." Samuel sighed deeply. His eyes clouded with sadness. "Maybe she wanted to protect you. Maybe she thought I would never come back. Or maybe life simply gave her no chance to explain. I will never know. But I do know one thing, Maya, I loved her. And I love you, even if I am only just beginning to show it." The word sank deep into her heart. Love. A word she had not expected to hear from this man so soon, yet it felt honest, without force, like water finding its way to dry soil. She nodded silently, tears slipping down her cheeks. Over time, something remarkable happened. The people in Maya's neighborhood began to notice. They saw the older man visiting regularly, carrying groceries, fixing things, smiling with pride as he pushed the stroller down the street. Curious whispers turned into gentle smiles. For years, Maya had been seen as the girl struggling alone. Now, she was no longer alone. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in soft colors, Samuel sat in the tiny apartment with Maya and her baby. He looked around the room, the cracked walls, the worn furniture, and he thought about all the years Maya had faced without his support. His heart ached, but it also filled with determination. "Maya," he said softly, "this place is small. You deserve more. Your child deserves more. Let me help you. Not out of pity, but out of love. Let me give you what I should have given years ago: stability." Maya looked at him carefully. "I don't want charity." He shook his head firmly. "It's not charity. It's family. You are my daughter. This little one is my grandchild. It is my duty, and my joy, to help." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. It wasn't easy for her to accept help, but she realized something important: love sometimes comes not in words, but in actions. And his actions had proven he meant every word. Weeks turned into months. Their bond grew stronger. Samuel became a constant presence in their lives, and Maya's heart slowly healed from years of loneliness. The necklace, once almost lost, now hung safely around her neck again, not as a burden but as a symbol of connection between mother, daughter, and father. One afternoon, as they walked together through the marketplace, Maya noticed how Samuel carried her baby on his shoulder, gently pointing at fruits and flowers, whispering little stories as if the child could understand. She smiled to herself, realizing how much had changed. She thought back to the day she had stepped into his shop, desperate and broken. She remembered the emptiness in her heart when she placed the necklace on the counter. And now, she realized, what she had gained was far greater than what she almost lost. That night, as she tucked her baby into the crib, she sat quietly and whispered a prayer to her mother. "Mama, I didn't understand why you kept the truth from me. But I think I do now. Maybe you believed the right time would come, when I needed him the most. And you were right. Because today, I am not alone anymore. Thank you. Her tears fell softly, not of pain this time, but of gratitude. In the jewelry shop, Samuel polished a small ring late into the night. He paused, staring at the family photograph he had taken recently with Maya and the baby. His heart swelled with peace he had not known for decades. He whispered to himself, "Grace, I found her. I found our daughter. And I will never let her go again." Life had not given them a perfect beginning, but it had offered them a second chance. And sometimes, a second chance was all it took to turn sorrow into joy, and strangers into family.